The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of the Galactic Military Academy. Recruits from dozens of worlds gathered in formation, their varied forms creating a colorful display of galactic diversity. Among them stood Tom Rivers, one of only 3 humans in the elite combat program. Zara Velkon watched him from across the courtyard. Her purple skin gleamed in the sunlight, and her silver eyes tracked his every movement with predatory focus. As a Calarian, she possessed natural advantages that made her a formidable warrior. Her people could read thoughts, move faster than most species, and possess strength that could crush steel. Tom appeared ordinary by comparison. Average height, brown hair, and no visible enhancements. To Zara, he represented everything weak about humans. Yet somehow, he had qualified for the same program that she had trained her entire life to enter. Attention, recruits! Commander Brass bellowed from the platform. The Thraxian officer's 4 arms gestured toward the obstacle course. Today we test your combat readiness. You will work in pairs. Calarian Zara, you are paired with human Tom. A smirk crossed Zara's face. This would be entertaining. The course stretched before them like a mechanical nightmare. Moving platforms, laser grids, and combat drones created a maze designed to push warriors to their limits. Most pairs struggled to complete it within the time limit. Try to keep up, human, Zara said as they approached the starting line. Her telepathic abilities let her sense Tom's emotional state. Surprisingly, she detected no fear, only calm determination. The whistle blew. Zara leaped forward with inhuman grace, her enhanced muscles propelling her across the first gap in 3 bounds. She landed on the moving platform and spun to watch Tom struggle behind her. But instead of attempting her athletic approach, he studied the platform timing for several seconds before making a single, perfectly calculated jump that landed him beside her. Lucky, she muttered. The laser grid came next. Zara's telepathic senses allowed her to predict the pattern changes before they happened. She danced through the deadly beams like they were standing still. Tom followed a different path entirely, using reflective surfaces to track beam angles and moving with mechanical precision rather than supernatural grace. By the 3rd obstacle, Zara began to feel annoyed. Tom kept pace with her despite lacking any of her natural advantages. When combat drones attacked them, she used her strength to crush their armor plating. Tom disabled them by targeting weak points she had never noticed before. They completed the course in record time. Acceptable, Commander Brass noted, marking his data pad. However, I observed a lack of teamwork. Calarian Zara, your individual performance was excellent, but you provided no support to your partner. Human Tom, your tactical analysis was sound, but you could benefit from trusting your teammates' abilities. Zara's cheeks flushed purple. The criticism stung because it was accurate. She had treated Tom like baggage to be dragged along rather than a partner. The human slowed me down, she said. I could have finished twice as fast alone. Perhaps, Commander Brass replied. But warriors fight in teams, not as individuals. Dismissed. As they walked back to the barracks, Zara's telepathic abilities picked up murmurs from other recruits. Many agreed with her assessment. Humans were the weakest species in the galaxy. What was Tom even doing here? Hey, Tom, called out Nyx, a reptilian Saurian recruit. Maybe you should transfer to the engineering program. Leave the fighting to real warriors. Several recruits laughed. Tom's expression remained neutral, but Zara sensed a flicker of hurt that he quickly suppressed. For some reason, this irritated her more than his competent performance had. At least he finished the course, she said sharply. Unlike some people who are still stuck on the laser grid. Nyx's scales flushed orange with embarrassment. He had indeed failed that section. But Zara's defense of Tom surprised everyone, including herself. The weeks that followed established a pattern. In individual combat exercises, Zara dominated effortlessly. Her telepathic abilities let her read opponents' intentions before they acted. Her enhanced reflexes turned their attacks into slow-motion displays. Her strength ended fights with single blows. Tom, by contrast, won through preparation and adaptation. He studied his opponent's fighting styles, identified their patterns, and exploited weaknesses that others missed. When facing stronger opponents, he used their size against them. Against faster opponents, he controlled distance and timing. Against telepaths, he learned to think in ways that confused mental reading. How do you do that? Zara asked after watching him defeat a Thraxian twice his size. Kex should have crushed you in the first exchange. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead. Thraxians have incredible strength, but their forearmed fighting style creates predictable patterns. Their high stance also leaves their lower body vulnerable to sweeps. But how did you know to target his third elbow joint? I studied the anatomy texts. Thraxian joints have a weakness there that most fighters don't know about because they rely on overwhelming force instead of precision. Zara found this answer both impressive and irritating. Tom won fights through knowledge and preparation rather than natural gifts. It seemed like cheating, except that it wasn't. The tactical simulations proved even more frustrating for her. These virtual reality exercises placed squads in complex military scenarios that required quick thinking and coordination. Zara excelled at direct combat within the simulations, but struggled with the strategic elements. Tom, however, seemed to see patterns that others missed. Enemy dropships will arrive at coordinate 7-7 Alpha in 30 seconds, he announced during one exercise. If we position ourselves in the canyon below, we can force them into a crossfire. How could you possibly know that? Zara demanded. The simulation had provided no such information. Their approach vector and the terrain layout create limited landing options, Tom explained while directing their squad into position. They'll choose the tactically superior site, which means the ridge overlooking the valley. He was correct. The exercise ended in their squad's decisive victory. These successes began earning Tom respect from other recruits, which only increased Zara's frustration. She had trained since childhood to become the perfect warrior. Her people's natural advantages should have made her the obvious squad leader. Instead, instructors increasingly turned to Tom for strategic input. It's not fair, she complained to her roommate, Kira, after another exercise where Tom's tactics had saved their team. Humans are supposed to be weak. Why is he so difficult to predict? Kira, a feline Falarian with enhanced senses, groomed her whiskers thoughtfully. Maybe that's exactly why he's effective. Everyone underestimates humans because they lack obvious advantages. But Tom doesn't fight like other species. He fights like a human. That doesn't mean anything, Zara protested. Doesn't it? When was the last time you faced an opponent who couldn't be read telepathically, overpowered physically, or outmaneuvered through speed? Zara considered this uncomfortable question. The answer was never. She had always relied on her natural advantages to win. The turning point came during their first real mission. Attention, advanced combat students, announced Colonel Vex, the Academy's senior instructor. You will investigate a derelict research station in the Outer Rim. This is not a simulation. Real dangers may await you. The mission briefed like a routine assignment. The research station had gone silent 3 days earlier. Their squad would board the facility, determine what happened, and extract any survivors. Simple and straightforward. Zara felt excitement building as their transport approached the station. Finally, a chance to prove herself in actual combat rather than training exercises. She checked her equipment one final time: energy rifle, combat armor, and telepathic enhancer that amplified her mental abilities. Tom sat across from her, reviewing technical specifications on his datapad. No special equipment, no enhancements, just standard gear and whatever plans were forming in his mind. Nervous, human? She asked. Cautious, he replied without looking up. Something doesn't feel right about this. What do you mean? Tom gestured at the data. Research station loses contact during a routine experiment. No distress signal, no indication of mechanical failure, no response to communications. Equipment just stops working simultaneously across the entire facility. So, systems fail all the time. Not like this. Look at the pattern. He showed her the timeline. Life support stopped first, then communications, then artificial gravity, then auxiliary power. That's not a cascade failure. It's a methodical shutdown. Zara peered at the information. She saw numbers and technical details, but none of it formed a meaningful pattern to her. Tom somehow extracted intelligence from data that looked random to everyone else. "You're overthinking it," she said. "Probably just a reactor malfunction." "Maybe," Tom agreed, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it. The docking procedure went smoothly. Their squad of 8 recruits entered through the station's main airlock under the supervision of Sergeant Kane, a veteran Corvan warrior whose scarred hide spoke of countless battles. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows throughout the corridors. Their footsteps echoed hollowly in the artificial gravity. Life support systems hummed at minimal levels, providing barely adequate atmosphere. "Stay alert," Sergeant Kane commanded. "Standard sweep pattern. Check every room." Zara extended her telepathic senses, searching for signs of life. The station felt empty, but not abandoned. Something lingered at the edge of her perception, like a whisper she couldn't quite hear. They found the first bodies in the central laboratory. 20 researchers lay scattered across the floor in various positions. No obvious wounds, no signs of struggle, no indication of violence. They appeared to have simply collapsed where they stood. "Poison gas," suggested Nix, his scales shifting to nervous yellow. Sergeant Kane scanned the area with his detector. "Atmosphere reads normal. No toxins detected." Zara knelt beside one of the bodies, a Calarian scientist similar to herself. She touched the corpse's forehead, using her telepathic abilities to search for residual thoughts or emotions. Sometimes violent deaths left psychic impressions that could be read hours later. She found nothing. Not just absence of thought, but absolute void. It was like the scientist's mind had been completely erased. "Sergeant," Tom called from across the laboratory. "I think you should see this." He stood before a large containment chamber that dominated the center of the room. The transparent walls revealed nothing but empty space, but diagnostic displays showed unusual readings. According to these logs, they were studying something called a null entity, Tom reported. A life form discovered in deep space that exists outside normal reality. "Exists how?" Sergeant Kane demanded. Tom scrolled through the data. "The reports are confusing. They describe it as intelligent but not alive, present but not detectable, hostile but not aggressive. It apparently feeds on consciousness itself." A chill ran through Zara's spine. "Where is it now?" "Unknown. The containment field failed approximately 4 hours ago." Sergeant Kane activated his communicator. "Command, this is Squad 7. We have a code black situation. Request immediate evacuation." Static answered him. Tom was already moving, checking the communications array. "Something is jamming our signal. We can't call for help." "Then we complete the mission manually," Sergeant Kane decided. "Gather what data we can and return to the ship." They spent the next hour collecting research files and scanning the facility. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the investigation became. Security footage showed the researchers working normally one moment, then collapsing the next. No visible threat appeared on any recording. "It's like they all just decided to die at the same time," Kira observed, her enhanced senses detecting no unusual scents or sounds. Zara continued probing with her telepathic abilities, searching for any trace of the missing entity. The mental landscape of the station felt wrong, like a song with missing notes or a picture with gaps where important details should be. Then she felt it. A presence that wasn't presence. An intelligence that consumed rather than created. A hunger that fed on the very essence of conscious thought. "It's here," she whispered. The lights went out. Emergency illumination activated a moment later, bathing everything in hellish red. But in that brief instant of absolute darkness, Zara sensed movement. Not physical motion, but something shifting in the spaces between reality. "Defensive positions," Sergeant Kane ordered. The squad formed a tight circle, weapons raised, but they had no target to shoot. The entity remained invisible, intangible, and undetectable to normal senses. Zara felt its attention focus on her. Her telepathic abilities made her a beacon in its alien perception. The mental contact was like touching ice that burned, emptiness that had weight, silence that screamed. "I can sense it," she gasped. "It's trying to feed on my mind." "Fight it," Sergeant Kane commanded, but his words sounded distant and fading. Zara tried to resist, but the entity's hunger was overwhelming. It didn't attack her thoughts directly. Instead, it simply absorbed them, drinking her consciousness like water disappearing down a drain. Her vision blurred. Her legs trembled. The telepathic connection that gave her such advantage in combat now became a vulnerability that the creature exploited. Around her, the other squad members began showing similar symptoms. They swayed on their feet, their eyes becoming unfocused, their weapons dropping from nerveless fingers. All except Tom. While everyone else succumbed to the entity's mental assault, Tom remained alert and active. He moved through the group, checking their conditions and monitoring the situation with clear, sharp focus. "Why isn't it affecting you?" Zara managed to ask through the fog clouding her mind. "I don't know," Tom admitted. "But I'm going to find out how to stop it." He pulled out his datapad and began analyzing the research data they had collected. While his teammates fought a losing battle against an enemy that consumed consciousness, Tom worked with the methodical determination that had carried him through every challenge. "The research notes mention a resonance frequency," he said, more to himself than to others. "If the entity exists outside normal reality, there might be a way to force it back." Zara felt her telepathic abilities being drained away like blood from a wound. Soon she would be as empty as the dead researchers they had found. Around her, Nix collapsed to his knees, his scales fading to pale gray. Kira curled into a ball, her enhanced senses overloading as the entity fed on them. Tom found what he was looking for. "The station's main computer has a sonic array designed for deep space communications," he announced. "If I can modify the frequency generators to produce the inverse resonance pattern described in these notes, it might disrupt the entity's feeding process." "Do it," Sergeant Kane managed to whisper before slumping against a wall. Tom ran through the corridors toward the communications center, leaving his squad behind. Zara watched him go with growing despair. How could one human succeed where their entire team had failed? But as her consciousness continued to drain away, she began to understand something important. The entity fed on mental energy, psychic abilities, and enhanced senses. It consumed everything that made other species superior to humans. Tom possessed none of those advantages. His mind worked differently, processing information through analysis rather than intuition, logic rather than enhanced perception. To the entity, he was almost invisible, too ordinary to notice, too basic to feed upon. The human's greatest weakness had become his ultimate strength. Minutes passed like hours as Tom worked frantically in the communications center. Zara felt herself fading, her thoughts becoming scattered and dim. Soon there would be nothing left of her but an empty shell. Then the sonic array activated. A deep, thrumming vibration filled the station. Not quite sound, not quite energy, but something that existed in the spaces between normal senses. The entity's feeding suddenly stopped. Zara gasped as her consciousness snapped back into focus. Around her, the other squad members shook their heads and struggled to their feet. The oppressive mental weight that had been crushing them lifted like fog burning away in sunlight. Tom's voice echoed through the station's communication system. The resonance pattern is forcing the entity back into its containment field. Everyone needs to evacuate immediately. I can only maintain the frequency for a few more minutes. They ran. Through corridors that no longer felt haunted, past laboratories where death had lost its grip, toward their ship and safety. Behind them, the sonic array continued its reality-bending song, holding back a creature that existed beyond normal understanding. Tom met them at the airlock, his face pale with exhaustion but his eyes still sharp and alert. As their ship pulled away from the station, Zara watched through the viewport as the facility's lights began going out one by one. "Will the containment hold?" she asked. "For a while," Tom replied. "Long enough for a proper containment team to arrive with better equipment." Zara looked at the human who had saved them all. No telepathic abilities, no enhanced strength, no special advantages beyond the ability to think clearly under pressure and find solutions where others saw only problems. For the first time since entering the academy, she felt genuine respect for Tom Rivers. But she also felt something else, a troubling question that she couldn't quite voice. How had a supposedly weak human succeeded where more advanced species had failed? What did that say about the assumptions she had built her entire life around? The answer to that question would have to wait. For now, they were alive because Tom had proved that sometimes the greatest strength came not from natural advantages, but from refusing to give up when those advantages failed. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back to the academy and safety, Zara found herself looking at Tom with new eyes. The human warrior she had mocked and dismissed had just demonstrated something that shook her understanding of what true strength meant. The teasing would have to stop. In its place, something else was beginning to grow, a grudging admiration that made her wonder what other assumptions about humans might be wrong. 3 days after returning from the derelict station, Zara received permission for emergency leave. The encounter with the null entity had shaken every member of Squad 7, but none more than her. The experience of having her telepathic abilities turned against her had left deep mental scars that needed time to heal. Commander Brass approved her request without question. "Take 2 weeks," he said, reviewing her medical report. "The Academy physicians recommend complete rest from telepathic training until you recover fully." Zara packed her belongings with mechanical precision. Her hands moved automatically while her mind remained fixed on the events at the research station. She kept replaying the moment when Tom had saved them all, analyzing it from every angle. How had the human succeeded where everyone else had failed? The question gnawed at her like a persistent ache. Before leaving the academy, she found herself walking to the training grounds where Tom was practicing alone. He moved through combat forms with steady determination, each movement precise and controlled. No wasted energy, no flashy displays, just methodical improvement. "You don't have to train by yourself," she said, approaching the practice area. Tom paused mid-strike and turned to face her. "Most people prefer partners who can match their abilities. I don't want to slow anyone down." The comment stung because she recognized her own past words reflected in his statement. How many times had she complained about being paired with the weak human who would hold her back? "You saved our entire squad," she said quietly. "That doesn't sound like slowing anyone down." Tom resumed his practice routine. "I just did what needed to be done. Anyone else would have figured out the same solution." "No," Zara said firmly. "None of us could have done what you did. The entity fed on our enhanced abilities and turned them against us. But you didn't have enhanced abilities for it to exploit. So I succeeded because I'm weak." Tom's tone carried no bitterness, only genuine curiosity. Zara struggled to find the right words. "You succeeded because you think differently than the rest of us. We rely on our natural advantages so much that we forget how to solve problems without them. But you never had that option." Tom considered this while executing a complex defensive sequence. "Maybe that's why humans developed the way we did. Without telepathy or enhanced strength, we had to become adaptable." Adaptable, Zara repeated the word, testing how it felt. In Calarian culture, adaptability was considered a weakness. Warriors were supposed to excel through superior abilities, not by changing their approach to match circumstances. But Tom's adaptability had saved their lives. "I'm going home for a few weeks," she told him. "When I return, maybe we could train together properly. As partners, not as opponents." Tom stopped his practice routine entirely and looked at her with surprise. "You want to train with me?" "I want to understand how you do what you do," Zara admitted. "The Academy teaches us to maximize our natural abilities, but you've shown me there might be other approaches worth learning." A small smile crossed Tom's face. "I'd like that." The journey home to Caleria Prime took 18 hours through hyperspace. Zara spent most of the trip in meditation, trying to process everything that had happened. The null entity had drained her telepathic abilities so completely that she still felt partially disconnected from her own mind. But perhaps that disconnection was allowing her to see things more clearly. Without the constant background noise of telepathic impressions, she found herself observing the world differently. Details that she had always sensed psychically now required careful visual analysis. Emotions that she had read directly from people's minds now had to be interpreted from facial expressions and body language. It was frustrating and enlightening at the same time. Caleria Prime appeared through the viewport as a jewel of purple and silver, its crystalline cities reflecting the light of twin suns. Home looked exactly as she remembered, but Zara felt like a different person returning to familiar places. Her family estate sat in the mountains outside the capital, a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings that had housed the Velkon clan for 6 generations. Her mother, Commander Elena Velkon, waited at the landing pad as Zara's shuttle touched down. Elena's appearance commanded immediate respect. Tall even by Calarian standards, with silver hair that marked her as a veteran warrior and purple eyes that missed nothing. Her telepathic abilities were among the strongest on Caleria Prime, and her military record included decorations from 3 different conflicts. "My daughter," Elena said, embracing Zara as she stepped off the shuttle. "You look tired." "The mission was more difficult than expected," Zara replied, allowing herself to relax in her mother's arms. Here, surrounded by familiar scents and sounds, she could finally let her guard down. Elena studied her daughter's face with the practiced eye of someone who had seen combat trauma before. The Academy's report mentioned a telepathic attack. "How severe was the damage?" "I'll recover," Zara said. "But it was like having part of my mind torn away. I've never felt so helpless." They walked together toward the main house, past gardens where Calarian flowers bloomed in patterns that created natural telepathic harmonies. The peaceful environment helped ease the lingering tension from her ordeal. "Tell me about this mission," Elena requested as they settled in the family's private dining room. The official reports always leave out the important details. Over dinner, Zara described everything that had happened at the research station. The dead scientists, the invisible entity, her squad's gradual collapse as their minds were drained away. She spoke carefully about Tom's role in their rescue, unsure how her mother would react to praise for a human. "This Tom Rivers performed admirably," Elena commented when Zara finished her account. "His tactical thinking saved your entire unit." "You're not surprised?" Zara asked. She had expected skepticism about human capabilities. "Should I be?" Elena's purple eyes regarded her daughter thoughtfully. "Humans have always been underestimated. That doesn't mean the estimates are accurate." There was something in her mother's tone that suggested deeper knowledge, but Zara was too tired to pursue it immediately. The emotional exhaustion from recent events combined with the comfort of being home made her feel drowsy. "I think I need to rest," she said, rising from the table. "Of course. We can talk more tomorrow." Zara slept for 14 hours straight, her body finally releasing the tension it had carried since the mission. When she woke, bright afternoon sunlight streamed through her bedroom windows. The familiar purple stone walls and traditional Calarian furnishings made the academy seem like a distant memory. She found her mother in the study, reviewing military reports on a holographic display. Elena's expression was serious as she analyzed casualty figures and strategic assessments from the Outer Rim conflicts. The war is going badly? Zara asked, settling into a chair beside her mother's desk. The consortium forces are more organized than we anticipated, Elena admitted. Their new tactics are causing significant problems for our traditional military doctrine. Zara studied the holographic battle displays. Red markers indicated enemy positions while blue showed Galactic Alliance forces. The patterns looked chaotic to her, but she knew her mother could read strategic information from the arrangement. What kind of tactics? She asked. Asymmetric warfare. Instead of meeting our superior forces directly, they use hit-and-run attacks, sabotage, and psychological operations. They turn our advantages against us by forcing us to fight on their terms rather than ours. The description triggered a memory of Tom's fighting style. He never tried to match opponents in areas where they were stronger. Instead, he found ways to make their strengths irrelevant while exploiting weaknesses they didn't know they had. Like the human approach, Zara said without thinking. Elena's head turned sharply toward her daughter. What did you say? Tom fights the same way. He doesn't try to overpower stronger opponents or outspeed faster ones. He changes the rules of engagement until his disadvantages become advantages. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the desk surface. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that Zara had never heard before. Zara, there are things about your heritage that I never told you. Things I thought would be better left in the past. A chill ran down Zara's spine. What kind of things? Elena stood and moved to the window overlooking the mountain valley. Her silhouette was outlined against the purple sky as twin suns began to set. 21 years ago, I was assigned to a deep space exploration mission. Joint operation between Calarian forces and the Earth Defense Corps. It was one of the first times our species had worked together on an equal basis. Zara listened with growing attention. Her mother had never spoken about her early military service in detail. The mission commander was a human named David Rivers. Brilliant tactical officer, completely dedicated to his duty, and unlike any person I had ever met. Elena's voice softened with memory. Most species rely on their natural advantages. Humans have to rely on each other. David Rivers, Zara repeated. The name was familiar. Tom's last name is Rivers. Yes. Elena turned back to face her daughter. David was Tom's father. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She gripped the arms of her chair as the implications cascaded through her mind. You knew Tom's father, she said slowly. I knew David very well. Elena returned to her desk and activated a secure file on the holographic display. Our mission took us into uncharted space where we discovered an ancient alien artifact. Something that predated any known civilization. Images appeared in the air between them. Star charts, technical readouts, and photographs of a crystalline structure floating in the void between stars. The artifact was a weapon, Elena continued. Powerful enough to destroy entire star systems. The consortium wanted it for themselves, but David convinced our joint command that it was too dangerous for anyone to possess. What happened? We destroyed it. But the consortium sent a fleet to stop us. David stayed behind to ensure the weapon's destruction while the rest of us escaped. Elena's voice caught slightly. He saved billions of lives that day. Zara stared at the images of her mother's past mission. Everything looked strange and distant, like scenes from someone else's life. You cared about him, she observed. I loved him, Elena said simply. Despite the differences between our species, despite the complications it created, I loved David Rivers. And he loved me. The emotional weight behind those words was staggering. Calarians typically formed bonds within their own species. Cross-species relationships were not forbidden, but they were extremely rare and often difficult to maintain. Did he know? Zara asked quietly. Know what? Did he know about me? Elena's silence stretched long enough to become an answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I discovered I was pregnant 3 weeks after David died. By then, his ship had been destroyed and his sacrifice had become legend in human space. I decided to raise you as a Calarian warrior, focusing on the advantages you inherited from my side of your genetics. Zara felt the world tilting around her. Everything she thought she knew about herself was crumbling and reshaping into something entirely new. Tom is my brother, she said, testing the words to see how they felt. Half-brother, Elena corrected. You share the same father but different mothers. David had a son from a previous relationship who was raised on Earth. The revelation explained so much. Tom's tactical thinking, his ability to adapt and overcome challenges, his refusal to give up when faced with superior opponents. He had inherited their father's mind while she had inherited their father's determination combined with Calarian telepathic abilities. Why didn't you tell me before? Elena moved to a cabinet and retrieved a small device that looked like a data storage crystal. She placed it on the desk between them. Because I wanted you to become the warrior you were meant to be, not someone trying to live up to her father's legend. David Rivers was one of the greatest tactical minds in human history. His strategies are still studied in military academies across known space. She activated the crystal. Suddenly the room filled with holographic recordings of a man who looked remarkably like an older version of Tom. David Rivers stood before a tactical display, explaining strategies to a mixed group of human and alien officers. Asymmetric warfare isn't about being weaker than your opponent, his recorded voice said. It's about making strength irrelevant by changing the nature of the conflict itself. Zara watched her father speak about concepts that she was only beginning to understand. His approach to warfare was exactly what Tom had demonstrated against the null entity. Not trying to match the creature's advantages, but finding a completely different way to achieve victory. Tom doesn't know either, she realized. No. David's military records were classified after his death. Tom knows his father died in military service, but not the details. I've been watching his progress at the academy through official channels, but we've never met. You've been watching him? Elena nodded. I wanted to see what kind of man David's son would become. I'm not surprised that he ended up saving your life. That sounds exactly like something David would have done. Zara stood and walked to the window where her mother had been standing earlier. The purple sky was darkening as night approached, and the first stars were becoming visible. I spent months mocking him, she said. Calling him weak, making him feel like he didn't belong at the academy. And now? Now I understand that I was the one who didn't understand what strength really means. Zara turned back to face Elena. I want to tell him the truth. He deserves to know about David, about their connection. Elena's expression grew troubled. That's not my decision to make. Tom has a life and identity of his own. Learning about David might complicate that in ways we can't predict. But he also deserves to know that his tactical abilities come from one of the greatest military minds in galactic history. Maybe it would help him understand his own potential. They talked long into the night, discussing the implications and complications of revealing family secrets that had been hidden for 20 years. Elena shared more stories about David Rivers, painting a picture of a man who combined brilliant intelligence with absolute dedication to protecting others. He once told me that humans developed their tactical thinking because they had to, Elena recalled. Every other species had natural advantages that made survival easier. Humans had to become smarter, more cooperative, and more adaptable just to compete. Tom said something similar, Zara remembered. He thinks human adaptability developed because they didn't have other options. David believed that disadvantages could become advantages if you approached them correctly. He said that being physically weaker forced humans to become mentally stronger. By morning, Zara had made her decision. She would return to the academy early and find a way to tell Tom the truth about their family connection. But she would also do something else that felt equally important. She would learn to fight like a human. The remaining week of her leave passed quickly as Elena began teaching her concepts that weren't covered in traditional Calarian military training. How to analyze opponents without telepathic abilities. How to use environmental factors to overcome physical disadvantages. How to think tactically instead of relying on superior abilities. Your Calarian advantages will always be part of you, Elena explained during one training session. But if you can combine them with human adaptability, you'll become something that neither species could achieve alone. It was revolutionary thinking. Most military doctrine focused on maximizing existing strengths rather than developing new approaches. But David Rivers had proven that unconventional methods could defeat superior forces. On her last day home, Elena gave Zara a small device containing David's complete tactical database. These are strategies that won't be declassified for another 50 years, she said. Study them carefully. But remember that the real lesson isn't in the specific tactics. It's in the way of thinking that created them. Zara returned to the academy with a sense of purpose that she had never felt before. Her telepathic abilities had recovered fully from the null entity encounter, but she found herself relying on them less than before. The experience of functioning without mental enhancements had taught her to notice details that she had previously missed. She found Tom in the academy library, studying technical manuals for advanced starship systems. He looked up in surprise when she approached his table. "You're back early," he said. "Feeling better?" "Much better. And ready to begin that training partnership we discussed." She pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "But first, there's something important I need to tell you about your father." Tom's expression grew serious. "My father? What could you possibly know about him?" Zara took a deep breath and began to explain everything Elena had told her. About the joint mission, the ancient weapon, David Rivers' sacrifice, and the classified nature of his military service. She watched Tom's face change as he realized the magnitude of what he was learning. David Rivers was a legend, she concluded. His tactical innovations are still considered some of the most brilliant in military history. And you inherited his abilities. Tom sat in stunned silence for several minutes, processing the revelation that his father was not just a fallen soldier but a genuine hero whose strategies were studied across the galaxy. "Why are you telling me this?" he finally asked. "Because you deserve to know. And because I want to propose something that I think would honor both of our father's legacies." She leaned forward, her purple eyes meeting his brown ones with complete sincerity. "I want us to develop a new kind of warrior partnership. Calarian telepathic abilities combined with human tactical thinking. Neither species fighting alone, but both working together as equals." Tom considered this proposal carefully. That would be unprecedented. Interspecies combat teams aren't part of standard military doctrine. "Maybe it's time for military doctrine to change," Zara said. "The consortium is using asymmetric warfare against traditional tactics. Perhaps we need asymmetric warriors to counter them." A slow smile spread across Tom's face. "My father would have liked that idea. He always believed that impossible problems required impossible solutions." "Then you'll do it?" "I'll do it. But I have one condition." "What?" "You have to stop holding back your Calarian abilities to make me feel better. I want to learn to fight alongside a real telepathic warrior, not someone pretending to be weaker than she is." Zara felt a genuine laugh escape her lips for the first time in weeks. "Deal. But you have to stop downplaying your tactical abilities. I want to learn from the son of David Rivers, not someone who thinks he's just lucky." They shook hands across the library table, sealing a partnership that would prove revolutionary in ways neither of them could imagine. Around them, other students studied in quiet concentration, unaware that they were witnessing the beginning of something that would change interspecies military cooperation forever. Tom Rivers and Zara Velkon would go on to develop tactical innovations that combined the best of both species' approaches to warfare. Their success would inspire the formation of integrated multi-species combat units that proved devastatingly effective against consortium forces. But more than that, they would prove that strength came not from individual advantages, but from understanding how different abilities could complement each other when combined with trust, respect, and shared purpose. The human warrior who had been mocked for his weakness and the Calarian warrior who had relied too heavily on her strengths had found something together that neither could achieve alone. They had discovered that true power came from unity rather than superiority. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, the spirit of David Rivers would have been proud to see his children carrying forward his greatest lesson, that victory belongs not to the strongest, but to those who refuse to give up and never stop adapting to overcome whatever challenges they face. The Academy's newest partnership had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.